hadith. There are some that are
excellent, excellent.
There had to be a mind.
Wonderful. So let me get there, right?
Okay.
With the Quran, when the Prophet ﷺ put everything in order, in the first generation, all of the companions who were there when the Quran was revealed, the actual companions. Again, when we talk about Mark, Matthew, John, Luke, those aren't the actual apostles. These are Greek writings that were not written by those Aramaic fishermen. And so we have the actual companions who are, again, not the authors, but they were there when the Prophet taught them. They came together in what we call ijma', consensus, right? By consensus that this is the Quran that the Prophet Muhammad taught us, and by the time of Uthman, we have those copies, right? So these are not people coming, taking in chapters in and out, right? This is to confirm that what the Prophet ﷺ already said is the entire Quran, right? Now, hadith, the sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, right? Those were heard by the people, but they're not the words of Allah. They're the words of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Now here, we had disagreements, like did the Prophet say this or not say it? So it's an entire science. And what that science does, it sets certain rules. There are basically 5, and this is kind of advanced stuff, but you're a smart guy, so I'm going to go into this, right? That the chain has to be connected all the way to the Prophet, peace be upon him. Unlike what even the Bible, right? The Bible, you cannot connect the chain up to the Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, because the earliest writings we have are through anonymous sources in Koine Greek, a language they didn't even speak, right? So the chain is broken. Even Paul, he didn't actually meet Jesus. He saw a vision, but he didn't meet Jesus, right? So now you have the chain has to be connected, right?
And then his message was different than Jesus.
You're Muslim, bro. You're Muslim. Come on, man. Let's just do this, man. This is no 99%. You're at 100, bro. You're hitting that 100 right now, man. So you have the chain that's connected, right? Then you have to make sure each reporter has good memory. We call it dhabt. Like we judge their memory. Could they remember things? Did they make mistakes, right? Did they report something different from others, right? Then on top of that, his moral, adal, his moral character. On top of that, we have to make sure there's no textual defects, ilal, right? We have to make sure.
What do you mean by textual defects?
Meaning sometimes you flip a word.
Okay.
Right? Like we're having a conversation, if somebody has to verbatim repeat it, maybe like for example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people here, and we're having this conversation, and afterwards somebody says, you know, there was a gentleman, he was wearing a cream scarf, right? And one guy goes, he was wearing a black scarf. And that happens, right? But in hadith, now the Quran is preserved word by word, letter by letter. In hadith, that happens, right? So then we make sure we check everybody and say, okay, how many people were closest to the conversation? How many people reported what, right? So if we find that all 11 said one thing and a 12th person said something different, then we know that this person flipped it. It's called iqlab, right? He made a textual defect. So we catch that as well.
But we're returning to the George Washington example.
Excellent.
I'm not saying that either George Washington wasn't real, and I'm not saying that what you're explaining to me wasn't real.
Sure.
But it also reflects, in a sense, there had to be enough people to agree that this is the science that we're going to use.
Excellent.
And so in a sense,
so George Washington, right? Who was the one that? So in Islam, we don't have a council. We have all of the scholars of Islam from the earliest generations. When they started checking a hadith, they came up with these rules, right? To make sure
how
that.
Did they agree if there wasn't if the minds didn't come together?
Right.
How could they?
So I mean, it's not like 100 people or 10 people sat together, right? Different scholars in different areas wrote these works, sent it to each other, came and sat with each other, and came to these 5 are the agreed upon. No doubt to that, right? But think about this. George Washington.
So that was much more natural, whereas the Council of Nicaea was like we're dictating. Like
and the Mustalah al-Hadith doesn't come with a mindset and then try to justify it. The Council of Nicaea said, is Jesus divine or not? But we don't do that. What we say is we just want to verify. Once it's verified that it is authentic, we will follow it. We're not going to put our own ideas into it, right? So now, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Please. Yusuf, right? So now, okay. So now, if you look at the Council of Nicaea, they chose a religious theology and discredited many others, right? Those like Unitarians who didn't believe in Jesus being the Son of God or being divine were condemned after that, right? So hadith isn't like that. We don't come with a mindset. In hadith, we say, okay, we just want to verify and make sure that this is what the Prophet said. And if you can authentically establish that, what we call a sahih, authentic hadith, then that's it, we're going to believe that. It doesn't matter what I think personally. Now I have to be a Muslim. I have to do aslam. I have to submit myself to what is authentically established. So now, with George Washington, neither me and you know the name of anybody that was there when he led any kind of army. Right? I'm sure some historian has some names. I'm not saying they don't, but we don't. We just seen a history book and we're like, whatever. History book's written in 1998, and George Washington was way back when, whatever, right? But in the example of the Prophet Muhammad, in the example of the Prophet Muhammad, like there's a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, a hadith, not in the Quran, hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى, that every deed is based upon the intention, and everybody will get for what they intend. Right? Well, who heard this? Umar ibn Khattab. Like I can tell you right now, off the top of my head, who's the one that reported the hadith. He was the second caliph. His name is Umar. His father's name is Khattab. He has a daughter named Hafsa. He has a son named Abdullah. He has a son named Asim. Like I know he was born in the Quraysh. He was from Banu Adi. I know his tribe, where he was raised. I know that he could read and write in a time when many couldn't. I know about his memory, that he memorized the Quran. So I know all right. Like, who did he tell? Who did he tell? Al-Qama, all the way down the chain to Imam al-Bukhari or Imam Ahmad or these scholars of hadith. See, we verify all of that. It's not about putting our ideas. No, we verify. So when we know that no doubt that this is a narration from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, right? Now we believe in it, that deeds are based upon intention. So we have a whole science to verify that is more accurate than history books. That is more accurate than many of the things that we take to be facts today about Columbus and what happened and Hitler and what happened.
Yeah,
and many of this is written by the victor, right? If Hitler had won World War II.
I think it's worse than that. It's written by the one who has an agenda.
That's the victor, right? So I mean, think about this, right? Like if Stalin had won or if Hitler had won, their history books would have shown a very different version of what happened,
absolutely.
right? But for us as Muslims, we don't go by that. We just go by what has been authentically established. Once it's established, whether it is politically favorable or not, or any of that, we don't worry about that. We believe in it. Right? And that's why even the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, are so well preserved. Now, somebody may not know the science and they depend on weak narrations or fabricated narrations, but that's their ignorance. Us, who are people who are involved in this science, like myself, that's what my master's is in. I wrote a thesis on it, right? On a particular issue. So we know these sciences, and if you want to know if a particular narration is authentic or not, you can bring it to me, for example, and I will go and do that research. It may take months, it may take years, but I have in my house, I have a library, right, of books. A section is books of the people, of biographies of every narrator, where they lived, what they did, called Ilm al-Rijal, right? It's the biographies of those reporters. So we can still go back and find out, is this hadith an authentic hadith? Right? Yeah. This science is not there in the Christian tradition.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, even if you leave the Bible, other than the Bible, this how did Jesus pray and wake up and things other than what's in the Bible, nobody verifies any of that, right? It's not there in the Jewish tradition. It's not.
Anybody on the streets can say I'm a
preacher. Oh man, we get all kinds of preachers here. People that have congregations and they have never read we read verses of the Bible and they're like, you know, they've never heard it, right? They argue. We had a lady come in, that's the Quran. I said, no, it's the Bible, you know. We're talking about the hijab, the covering of the woman. She's like, is that your Quran? Like, no, it's in the Bible, and, you know. And we had preachers come here. We showed them verses and they had no answers. Muslims, we've memorized the whole Quran. There's no part of it that we haven't read. Every Muslim reads the Quran. Some Muslims, like people that I know personally, every 7 days they read the whole Quran. Right? Word to word, letter, and front to end. My own teachers, I've sat in lessons where they explain the whole Quran from the beginning to the end, every word of it. Right? We teach that, right? So this is why the message is so well preserved.